Now, we all know that governments are not as efficient as we would perhaps like them to be. Are you advocating that people pay higher inheritance tax to be administered by the same governments that are going to use that money wastefully, some might say? We're talking about higher immigration, higher taxes on the migrants, and higher inheritance taxes at the end of the day, which of course takes away incentive. It's been proved over and over again. Let me ask you this, Professor. These theories of yours, if you were actually told, guess what, we're going to make you president of the world, one new country, and we want you to implement these immediately, would you throw the lever?
No, I would not, because it would be, we have to distinguish between what is feasible in the short run or in the medium run, or what is desirable in general. Now,
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that's what I want. I want you to give me the feasible short and medium and long-term plan.
The feasible short and medium term is less impediments to migration, greater movement of people from poor countries to rich countries, and higher rate of growth of poor countries. So I think we agree on that. It's actually something that should be stimulated, and it's feasible. And actually, not only is it feasible, it is already happening.
May I ask you, how do you achieve those two things? Higher migration from poorer countries and higher growth in those countries where presumably their most talented people have just left.
No, in poor countries, higher growth rates has already taken place over the last 10 years. We have had actually return to growth in Africa, in post-communist world, just prior to this latest global crisis. Latin America is growing, most of Asia is growing. So the current crisis is really limited mostly to the Western European and East European countries and the United States. So growth is back.
Now, the question is, that growth would continue with heightened migration?
Well, that growth, I think, will continue with heightened migration because I don't see countries from Africa losing their best people. So I actually see many of the people who would not have a job, despite the fact that the economy has improved now, but they're still not going to get a job.
So migration of their poorest people.
Well, or there may be poorest or middle-class people to Europe. So I don't see that actually, particularly if you look at sub-Saharan Africa, which has a large population increase and which now has growth. I don't see that if they were people to leave sub-Saharan Africa, that they would be actually big, I mean, not people themselves would gain, but even short term, what is feasible now are two things. First, greater migration from poor countries to rich countries, for which you really need essentially multilateral agreements. So that's quite feasible, although, as I said, it's not easy because many people in rich world are not going to like that, and particularly they're not going to like that in the time of the crisis. But I'm talking maybe after this crisis is over, and we are talking about period in 3 or 5 years from now. The second thing, which is already taking place, is return to growth in Africa, Latin America, and Asia. So these countries are growing again, which is very important for Africa, which has been really on the decline for 20 years. Now, these countries also have a very high population growth rate and very many young people who have no jobs. For those young people who have no jobs, coming to Europe would be actually quite good. It would be good for them, and it would not be bad for their own countries. So I don't think that it would have detrimental impact on their own countries. Moreover, if you, for the well-educated people, you can actually argue that they should be obliged to go, maybe, let's say, once every 5 years to their own country. If, for instance, somebody is a doctor, that he should go every 5 years to his own country and work there for a year, for example.